Good morning. The old man here. December 6th, 2024. It's quite cool here this morning, kind of unseasonably cold. Nice day though, but wind ain't bad. But we're looking at 18 degrees this morning here near Saginaw, Michigan. Cool, crisp morning. Today, what I'd like to talk about is what I call the Matrix. I think most of you recall a movie come out, I believe it was in the 90s, somewhere in there. It's not so much, when I seen the movie The Matrix, wasn't really the movie itself that struck a chord with me. It was the concept. My whole adult life, I always thought something was off, that, the truth as you know it was never being portrayed to its fullest. It was always, let's call it a narrative, a word that's very popular anymore. They're always trying to sell you something. And I don't mean a product, but a concept. The movie, the basics of the movie, may be oversimplified, but the basics of the movie is that Reeves had the choice of taking the red pill or taking the blue pill. At the end of the day, he took the red pill, and he was able to see the Matrix and to realize that everybody was plugged into the Matrix. And the red pill allowed you to see the Matrix, see that you were in a Matrix, and that everything was a narrative, everything was a lie. Everybody was trying to, different governments, different entities, different corporations, everybody was trying to sell you a narrative. Wasn't good enough to put commercials on TV and, tell you of this latest, greatest product. But they were trying to sell you a narrative of how they wanted you to think. They didn't want you to think on your own. They wanted to tell you how to think and what to think. And by God, it's worked. But actually, it's worked for hundreds of years, hundreds and hundreds of years, actually. They've got an easier platform today. And it becomes easier and easier for them to sell you a narrative. Mostly, through the internet or whatever. But it's also through the internet that I call it a psyop and a counter psyop. The psyop is them trying to tell you a narrative that has no truth or very little truth or just enough truth to get you to believe it. And then the counter psyop, and I'll call that brought to you by, actually I look at it as good and evil. The psyop brought to you by evil and the counter psyop brought to you by good. And I also like to call it the patriots are on the side of good. And again, I've mentioned that I believe that the patriots have been trying to show you and expose the truth, and they were only having a limited amount of success. And they decided that what they needed is a front man that people were familiar with, people trusted, that the left or the evil, if you will, would have a hard time, showing that he was evil. That's always been their concept, is to accuse others of what they've done themselves. And that was very difficult, although they tried, from the Steele dossier and saying Trump was basically a Russian, not a Russian spy, but a Russian counterpart, if you would, that he supported Russia. And that is so ignorant that people would believe that. And but by God, it worked. Russia has been the United States enemy for years. And so it was an easy concept to sell. And a lot of people believed it, and some still do today, even though it's been proven hands down that it's nothing, nothing. There's no truth in it at all. They still run with it. The left still runs with it. The interesting part is that let's just talk about the last 100 years. The PSYOP or evil has been finding different ways of stealing your wealth, and they just keep compounding on it. You could also call it a bureaucracy. Every level of bureaucracy takes a little bit more of your wealth and the wealth of the country. We used to be able to do great things because not everything had been stolen. Let's say back 100 years ago, there was enough wealth in the general public that they could bond together and, let's say, build a grand church. Have you seen a grand church, let's say, built in the last 100 years? Not in the States. Maybe somewhere else that I'm not aware of, but not in the States. They've stolen enough wealth that you can't even do that anymore. The average person, they don't have enough that they could donate to or even put their own effort into that. And then since the 90s, we've given away all of our manufacturing jobs to other countries. Now, we didn't want that, but the people running the world wanted to take it to a cheaper labor force and make even more money. They knew that they were, leaving the United States with nothing at the end of the day. The only way we've been able to survive is because, and we're not, we don't appear to be a third world country, but boy, we sure are doing things that way. But it looked like we were still prosperous to some degree, but they've gotten rid of those jobs and moved them overseas. And the only reason we've been able to keep up the illusion of being the superpower is because our use of the dollar that dollar note, that debt note, has to be or has been used everywhere, as a tier one asset. That for the longest time, the only tier one asset that a bank or central bank could hold was the U.S. bond. Not too long ago, I think it was 2020, that the gold was added back to it. It had been a tier 3, tier 4 asset. So in other words, most banks and central banks would not hold a tier 3 asset. They wanted a tier 1 asset. Tier 1 means the most liquid, that in a moment's notice you can turn it to cash, and the cash of the country, whatever that is, whether it's a dollar, the yen, the peso, whatever, that would be, our U.S. bond could be, converted to that, to whatever currency they're dealing in their country, and prop up, by selling the bond, they could prop up their currency, whatever that currency was. And now that United States U.S. bond is one of two tier 1 assets, the bond being one and the gold being the other. And now that central banks and banks in general across the world have a second option, they're going for that second option. Now that it's able to. A lot of people saying that, whether it's, let's say China or Japan is trying to get rid of their tier 1 asset of the U.S. bond. In reality, they're both hurting very bad, and what they're doing is selling the U.S. bond in order to prop up their currency, make their currency look better and do better. They're not going to sell their other tier one asset, gold, because there's a time they could see that the U.S. dollar and or the bond is so manipulated, and the inflation of the money supply does not make it the best tier one asset. Gold is the best tier one asset. Gold only grows by, let's say, through mining, the supply only grows, let's say, 2% a year. It's not exactly 2%, but let's call it 2%. And obviously, in the past, they claimed that the U.S. dollar money supply only grew by 2%. But in reality, and they can lie figures don't lie, liars figure. And, it's always been more than 2%. I don't care what they claim. It's always, and sometimes it really gets away from them, and it's a lot more than 2%. And to keep let's say, the U.S. citizen, let's talk about them, but I think it's actually true worldwide. The U.S. citizen, they convince that person that the dollar is better than gold and silver, that gold and silver, is tough to store, it's expensive to store, it's very volatile. The price is always up, it's always down. Well, the fact of the matter is, the value of your gold and your silver is pretty constant. And again, I think the most you could say about it, that it grows, the inflation rate or the supply of gold only grows by 2% a year. That much more is mined every year. And in reality, you're offsetting that by the population of the world growing by 2%. So it's actually constant. It's not really, it's not being devalued because there's more every year. It's actually pretty constant. The new population, or the growth of the population of the world, actually makes it net zero. There's really no growth there at all, or it's like I said, a net zero growth. It's the same as the population raise. So it's not like the dollar where it's inflated, guaranteed inflated. They're telling you it's inflated 2% every year, guaranteed. But then we know it's more than that. So when these other countries are looking at the fact that our way of getting out of any situation is just to print more dollars, and it's inflated, and therefore their bonds are worth less. Now, their money is worth even less than our monetary system, because they have no way of exporting inflation. We do, by having the dollar, the gold, or the dollar reserve of the world, because we're the currency reserve of the world. We get to export our inflation, and these countries and central banks and whatever, they're looking at that going, oh crap, that's not of the two tier one assets. Obvious choice is gold. We will use the bonds we have to prop up our currency, because our currency is still, even no matter how bad the U.S. currency is, the dollar is, ours is even worse. All fiat dollars across the world are in worse shape, some more so than others, but are worse shape than the dollar. Some will argue I'm wrong, that there's, the Swiss franc and whatever else is better than the dollar. Well, maybe their policies are better, but at the end of the day, they don't have the ability to export inflation. Only we do. And I think what we're going to see coming back around, that eventually even now, I don't think the Chinese or the Japanese and other countries are buying the bond anymore. I think they're slowly, or not, at least not to the degree they were. They kind of like a drug addict. They got to wean themselves off of it. Besides, so many of the rules across the world are set up on the bond and the banking system that they can't get rid of it all at once. So they'll slowly buy less and sell more. it's just going to be a slow process. And then I think, much like many will say, especially Andy Schectman, it's his concept overall. If you listen to him at all, you'll hear him say it again and again and again, that it's little by little by little by little by little, and then all at once. And what he's really saying when he says that is, every day we are getting closer and closer to the reset. But we're going to only get so close to that reset, and then one morning you're going to wake up and the world as you know it does no longer exist. The Trump and the Patriots, especially the Patriots, I don't think Trump is a god by any means. I don't worship the man. I realize that he's the face of this movement, if you will. And that's it. He's not, he's a very smart man too, and he knows how to play the game. But in fact, it's the Patriots that are running the game and have been running the game. Let's call it the counter psyop. And again, I'm focusing on the last 100 years. I think it's even longer than that, but let's just focus on the last 100 years. Like I said, they're slowly bringing you into the fold. I think Trump's first 4 years was to let you know that and to red pill everybody, or as many people that were willing to accept the red pill, to let you know that you're a part of the matrix. And the goal of the Patriots is not to tell you what to think, but to think. Stop just taking everything as the gospel. Stop just believing everything. They've said, you say that a lie that's told over and over and over again suddenly becomes the truth. Well, it's never really the truth. It's just that, you hear this lie, whatever the lie is, doesn't matter what it is. You hear this lie every day on TV, and so many people are glued to the boob tube. And I hear this lie today, and I hear it tomorrow. And in the back of your brain, you're not taking into consideration where this lie is coming from. It's just like a ledger in the back of your mind. And, boy, I've heard that before. And I've heard that again. I've heard that again. I've heard that again. And before you know it, you're around the water cooler talking about this subject, whatever it is. And, in the back of your mind, you're going, well, yeah, that's got to be the truth. I've heard that so many times now. It's got to be the truth. It's, you don't even register the fact you've heard it from the same place, and it's not the truth. It's the same lie being told long enough that everybody believes it, or the majority. Not everybody's got to believe it, just the majority. And once you get the majority to believe something, all of a sudden it's the gospel, So I just like, to bring up the fact. Now, a lot of things I talk about are concepts that are going through my mind that are subject to change at any time. I'm continuously taking new information in, researching. Things are changing all the time. More information's coming out. Like I said, it's at any given time, it's the truth as the best of my knowledge and the best I've been able to put together. But that is always going to change. It's always changing. New concepts come to play all the time. Learning new things. Starting to think that, and again, this is going through my mind at the moment. I'm not saying that anybody should think this way, but I'm starting to think, why is Trump, and therefore the Patriots, starting to paint Bitcoin as the way to go? Some are saying that, it's going to replace the dollar. Well, I don't really see that. If you understand the concept of money, it's got to have X amount of functions. And Bitcoin doesn't have those functions. It wasn't programmed to have those functions. And if you try to reprogram it, it takes away the purpose of Bitcoin entirely. So I don't see it going there. What I do see, though, is possibly, and if you look at what is possibly the end game being possibly the end of the dollar and the end of, let's say, any derivative of the dollar, which would be the bond market, the stock market, the housing market, all the majors, and the minors as far as that goes. But let's talk about the majors. What if that is all the end game and we don't know when it's coming? We're heading there again, slowly, but surely, every day we get closer and closer and closer. But what if my way of thinking is, what if Trump and the Patriots, therefore the Patriots, know the end game, and what they can't do is give you the truth all at once, much like Trump couldn't spell out the truth that everything you knew for the last 100 years is a lie. He couldn't do that. You just shut down and go, oh, no, that's not possible. But he just gave you the hint that, well, it's fake news. Okay, and we had to, ponder that a while. And then he said it again, and he'd say it again, and he'd say it again. And as you're, that's compounding in your mind, you're starting to question, well, is that really fake news? Well, damn, maybe I ought to research that. And you start researching it, and you realize, well, yeah, everything they tell you is a bunch of shit, and that's where YouTube has grown. And I know YouTube isn't the best, the best platform in the world. It's a platform. It's a tool we can use to some degree to our advantage. And by God, let's do that. For anybody that's really controversial, anybody that's really controversial, they need to go to a platform like Rumble where they can speak the truth. It's just like Facebook back in the day. Facebook started out being one thing. Twitter started out being one thing. Trump seen that both of those platforms could be used, the Patriots and Trump, seen that both platforms could be used to their advantage, that the progressives had been using archaic technology to push forward their narrative, and Trump used Facebook and Twitter at the time to give you an alternative narrative, to basically let you know that what you're watching every day on the news is propaganda. And by bringing that to the forefront, people were able to people were able to start to think for themselves. The Patriots aren't telling you what to think, they're just asking you to think, to research. It's just like my concept. If you spend 40 hours a week, let's say, in a job to build your wealth, pay your bills, and possibly put some money together, for your future or your kids' future, why wouldn't you spend at least 10%, let's say 4 hours a week, doing research on retaining your wealth, finding out what the truth is? My research has led me to gold and silver. Your research may lead you to something else. We've all got our own, let's say I've got my agenda, you've got your agenda. At the end of the day, your life has got a certain concept, and mine's got a certain concept, and not every tool is going to serve us both. We all going to need something different. At the moment, I'm at gold and silver. Now, am I married to my gold and silver? No, I'm not. It's a tool for now. In my opinion, for me, gold and silver is the best place to park my wealth. It's not a forever thing. I don't plan on, keeping my wealth in gold and silver from now to the end of my life. I plan on watching everything, adjust accordingly. We don't know what this world's even going to look like 5 years from now, let alone 25 years from now. But if there's a time that, let's say, farmland comes down to what is a reasonable figure, whatever that is, and it's not a dollar figure. I look at it as a goal to land. Just like a ratio, a gold to land ratio or a gold to housing ratio. Look at it in that respect, and that is closer and probably the actual truth as a ratio between the two. Dollar is just an illusion. They can play with that illusion and make you think you're wealthier. If they printed over the last few years, let's say 40% more money over the last 4 years or 5 years, 40% more dollars are now in existence, and 40% inflation, and your stock portfolio has only gone up by 20%, and you think, man, that looks good, 20%, holy shit, I'm kicking ass. Well, if inflation's gone up by 40% over the last 5 years, aren't you actually behind? So if you take the gold ratio to the S&P ratio, rather than the dollar figure, don't look at the dollar figure. The dollar figure, the number they're putting on your portfolio is a lie. Look at the gold to silver ratio. Right now it's like 84-1. It appears at least to me, that silver's a better buy. Some will say undervalued. I'd say, it's a better buy. I don't know if it's undervalued or not, but I think it's a better buy. You don't know where either gold or silver is going, and you always got to have gold as your base, at least in my opinion. Gold should be your base over everything else, and then silver being your second layer. It's more speculative than gold. I think gold is more constant. And as you get the manipulators out of the field entirely, in other words, you get rid of the futures market, and that'll come too. That day is coming. I don't know when, but that day is coming. Gold will hold a very steady value. Silver will fluctuate a little more, but that's okay. At some point, your gold to silver ratio will narrow to a point where it makes sense. Instead of 80-some-to-1, and let's say it gets down to 40-to-1 ratio, it's time to trade silver for gold. My end goal is always gold, or at least at this point is gold. But if the land to gold ratio gets down where you can buy a reasonable chunk of land, let's say 40 acres or 80 acres, for a reasonable amount of ounces of gold. Never mind the dollar figure. I don't care about the dollar figure. It doesn't matter. I'm looking at the ratio of gold to land, or gold, how many ounces per acre, how many ounces per 40, or how many ounces per 80, depending on what you're looking for. When that ratio narrows, it's time to trade gold for land. And then maybe in the future, when the stocks rebuild and the markets will rebuild again, based on a true monetary platform of gold and silver, never mind this dollar or any fiat currency. Like I said, it'll be probably 100 years before somebody will want a piece of paper after this is over with, and maybe you'll never see paper again. One last thing kind of going through my head today is, what if the end game is coming, and I'm sure it is, and that when Trump is promoting, to a degree, not really blowing it up, but to a degree, he's promoting Bitcoin. What if Bitcoin is the new bond market, or what if Bitcoin is a new settlement currency for the world, an online or a blockchain that is honest, unlike the dollar? You can't inflate your money supply away. If you're at a gold standard, you can't inflate your money supply. You can't inflate gold. gold only comes out of the ground so fast. I don't care how good technology gets. It only is going to come out of the ground so fast with so much effort. And so what if Bitcoin is either the new settlement currency for debt amongst countries, or it's the new bond market? I think he's trying to, the front man is trying to give you somewhat of a heads up that what may be coming. So much of what Trump is saying right now doesn't make any sense to anybody. They can't make heads or tail of it. And so therefore they figure he's lying. Like your average politician does nothing but lie. What if he's dealing out the truth little by little, where it's coming slow enough that it gives everybody a chance to process it and start to put the pieces of the puzzle together? It'll, until the end, I don't think, to the end of the fiat currency or the Great Reset, you won't have all the pieces of the puzzles, but you'll have enough that number one, the Patriots got a plan. The Patriots can make it work. And your only alternative is evil that you've been dealing with for the last 300 years. You're going to have a choice. The CBDC and evil, or gold and silver, and maybe even Bitcoin. I don't know. I don't know where it plays in, but gold and silver for sure. And maybe it wouldn't hurt to have a slice of Bitcoin. Maybe 1% or 0.5% of your wealth is in Bitcoin. So at least you got a foot in the door and you know how it works. And you at least understand the concept in the Great Reset and see where it falls in. All right, guys, my thoughts for today. Thank you. Have a great day. Appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. And by all means, leave a comment. I didn't get very many views on my video yesterday, but boy, you guys really left me a lot of good comments, and I'll be working on getting to those today. I sure do appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.